So let's move on to the Oklahoma game. I know we talked a little bit about the SEC slate as a whole, but when the next game on the schedule is Oklahoma, and they currently host the nation's top winning streak. They have a 13-game winning streak going into this game. They are 13-0. They're one of 4 teams that are 13-0 on the year, and they're really good. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Oklahoma is a very good team. And I think that I wouldn't say overrated, but they are slightly overvalued at times due to the fact that Oklahoma has a very poor non-conference slate. That's not to say they haven't won a couple of big games. They have beaten Arizona. They beat Louisville. They beat Michigan. Right, so they've beat a couple of big teams. However, it's tough to know exactly how good Oklahoma is, because there weren't a ton of those that were back-to-back. The Arizona and Louisville were back-to-back in their MTE, but Michigan, was sandwiched in between Oklahoma State, that's really not great this year, and Central Arkansas, that's downright abysmal. And so it's really, whereas Alabama and Auburn both have played really, really tough slates, and it really feels like you know what you got out of those teams. And even Tennessee, to a slightly lesser degree, again, they've played a tough slate, you know what you got. Oklahoma has played a couple of pretty good teams, but a lot of pancakes, right? From a KenPom perspective, and I know KenPom isn't everything, but they have played 6 teams outside of the top 300 in KenPom. Another team that was 266, right? For reference, Alabama in the same time frame has only played one team even close to that level, and it was North Dakota at 287, right? So Alabama has only played one team even on the same stratosphere as some of the teams that Oklahoma has played. North Dakota would have been the 6th best team that Oklahoma's played, and they were by far Alabama's worst opponent, right? So that's just what you have to look at when you're looking at Oklahoma's schedule, and when you're thinking about is, are they bad? No, right? Oklahoma is a very good team. Jeremiah Fears, and we'll talk about him here in just a second. Jeremiah Fears is absolutely legit. There's a good chance he's a one and done. He has been absolutely incredible, right? Oklahoma is a good team. However, they may not be quite as good as some people think due to that 0 in the loss column. A lot of people are being like, oh, Oklahoma's incredible. And granted, there's only a few undefeated teams, and the fact that they've gotten to this point undefeated says a lot. I think it also partially has to do with how poor the non-conference slate was, right? Because part of the reason why Alabama loses to an Oregon is they had to play a Houston and a Rutgers before they got there, right? When you take some lumps, or when you go on the road to Mackey Arena, right, when you have a really tough place to play, that makes it a little bit more difficult, right? So that's what I would say as it relates to when we're looking at the teams, in the SEC ACC Challenge, they play Georgia Tech, whereas Alabama gets North Carolina. Not saying North Carolina's great, but I think they're better than Georgia Tech. Auburn gets Duke, right? So it's just not the same level, and I think that should be taken into consideration when you look at this Oklahoma team. I do think, however, Oklahoma, like I said, is a pretty good team. I think that their defense is pretty decent, and their offense, like I said, mostly led by Fears, is absolutely really good. Fears is the guy, when you look at Oklahoma, that I think is going to get a lot of the praise, a lot of the accolades when you're talking Oklahoma basketball. And for good reason. He ends up winning the game for them against Michigan. Not sure if y'all saw that game, but he ends up hitting a and 1 3 to beat Michigan by 1. It was the difference in the game. He also leads them in scoring. He has 18 points a game. He also leads them in assists and steals, right? So he is a little bit of a do-everything guard. And I wouldn't say a Phylon, but he kind of, in the same way that Phylon is very much a two-way guard, he is that way, right? I will say Fears is a little bit more of a jump shooter than Phylon, but very much a two-way guy and somebody that really is a freshman that has jumped onto the scene and has been absolutely incredible. The other two guys that you're really going to talk about when you talk about Oklahoma is Jalen Moore and Duke Miles. They're the other two guys kind of averaging over double digits. Moore averaging closer to 18. Duke Miles closer to 13. Miles is almost a 47% 3-point shooter. Moore is a 38% 3-point shooter. Right, both of these guys absolutely can light it up from three, and I think that also the fact that they have played a lot of basketball. Right, Fears is the freshman, so he's the one that people are gonna hear, and he's gonna get a lot of the accolades and a lot of the praise. And hear a lot about him. But Duke Miles and Jalen Moore are two that are going to be, they've played a lot of basketball, and also they're both from the state of Alabama. Jalen Moore from Birmingham, Duke Miles from Montgomery. And I think that matters a little bit because I know, especially like from an Alabama perspective, Mark Sears and LeBaron Philon, you can tell how much it means to them to play for the university, being from the state. And I know sometimes when you're facing when somebody is facing their old state or old rivals or whatever, that sometimes, helps that person just have a little extra intensity going into that game, right? So that is something that I would say just to kind of be on the lookout for in this game is that Duke Miles and Jalen Moore both are from the state, and like I said, definitely something that you should kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're looking at this game. I do think that Alabama can win this game even on the road. I was at the Oklahoma game in which Brandon Miller's team lost in this arena. I do not think it is an arena that is incredibly tough to play in. It's kind of in a bowl, but I do think this is an arena that Alabama can have some success in. In that game, Oklahoma just shot the absolute lights out. Does this team have that ability? Yeah, potentially. This team absolutely has that ability, and they are a pretty good 3-point shooting team, over 36%, over 58% from two. This team has that ability to shoot really well. But I do think that Alabama understands, based on what we've seen here recently, the intensity on defense, the intensity in rebounding that just it's going to require to play at the high-level competition we need. And I'm not 100% certain that Oklahoma fully is under the understanding of what it's going to take game in and game out, again, due to that strength of schedule. Now, do I think by the end of conference play they could be much better at it? Absolutely, right? But it matters a lot that we're the very first SEC game they're playing, because I do think that they maybe have a slight misconception due to their non-conference slate, right? The thing I will say also when we're looking at Alabama that I want to see, and we talked about it in the South Dakota State game, that 3-point percentage kind of eked up a little bit. It was over 34%. If those two guys, both their foot hadn't been on the line, not been on the line, and they would have counted, I think it would have been over, closer to 36%. When you look at the Alabama teams in the past that have done really well, you would think because of the number of 3-point attempts that we take that the teams had to be an elite 3-point shooting team. And the team that kind of comes to mind is Brandon Miller's team, right? Brandon Miller, people think of him because he was a great 3-point shooter. But his team only shot 33.5% from three, slightly more than 1 point per possession. Last year's team was much better at 37%. But this current team is at 31.7%. However, they are already a better efficiency team because of how good they shoot from two, right? Alabama currently is at 63% from two. It's about 10 percentage points better than Brandon Miller's team was, for reference. If Alabama can even just bump up that 3-point percentage by a couple of percentage points, that leads to 1-2 additional makes a game, and the offense then is that much better, right? I think that the defense has taken a few lumps, but I think part of that is due to playing a few different guys, trying to understand who you need to play and when you need to play them. I think that the defense will be better as we continue on into conference play, and I do think that solidifying the roster a little bit will help that. And I do think that, again, the three-point shooting is the thing that I want to kind of keep an eye on, because if that number can bump closer to 33 and a half, again, that 1 point per possession number, I think that's really when you're going to see Alabama's offense kind of take some of the strides in which it can. I think this team has the capability of shooting even better than that, because I know this team has that ability to shoot. The question is just, are you going to see it, right? That's really the question when it comes to Alabama. If I'm going to give a prediction for the Oklahoma game, I think my prediction, KenPom has it as an 88-79 win. I do like kind of that rough idea of score margin. I would say maybe a tiny bit lower, like a 7 to 8 point margin, maybe not 9. My score prediction would probably be more in the 91-84 range. I do think that the possessions may be up a little bit, just due to Alabama has done a great job pushing the pace, especially with the multi-guard lineups that we run. There have only been a couple of games this year in which it was lower possessions, and we lost one of those games, and it was on the road. And one of those games was McNeese, where Will Wade really kind of tried to take all the air out of the ball to lose by a lower margin to help his net ranking. Right, I really feel like in the games in which, outside of Houston, right, Alabama's been able to push the pace, and so I do think that Alabama's going to get out and run with the ball a good bit in this one, and so I do think that the possessions are going to be up. So like I said, I would say probably a 91-84 type margin. I do think Alabama can win this game, and get off to a good start in SEC play. So I will talk about this game. I have a wedding I'm going to over the weekend, so as I mentioned, I will not be in attendance for this one. Unfortunately, sorry, I'm stupid. Complete side note, I said that this was on the road, and I just said that because I'm not going to be there. Completely sorry about that. This game is actually in Coleman, so let me readjust my score prediction. Sorry about that. I had a complete mishap. This game is actually going to be in Coleman, so I do think that Alabama actually probably wins by the 9 to 10 point margin. So let's go 91. Let's go 91-82. I think the margin's actually okay. Sorry about that. But Alabama wins this game. Alabama does cover, or does win by a fairly decent margin. I think that Alabama gets off to a good start in SEC play. As I was going to say, I'm not going to be in attendance this game. There's a friend of mine who's going to be using the ticket due to the fact that I am going to be at my college roommate's wedding. So unfortunately, I am going to miss this one, but I will be at the very next home game against Ole Miss. Everyone who is going to be attendance for this one, make it loud. Let's welcome Oklahoma to the SEC. I will say I was still at that original game in Norman when Brandon Miller's team lost and they shot like crazy. But yeah, it was. I think that we need to avenge that loss. So I think that Alabama does win. I think Alabama does play really well in this game. I think that shortening the roster is going to help, and I think that Alabama knows what it's going to take. So that's what my thoughts are. I really appreciate everyone for watching. Sorry for the slight abbreviated / longer episode. I've had a lot going on with Christmas time and then with this wedding coming up. But as soon as I get back, I will be back for good, and don't have any trips planned or anything. So we will be back to regularly scheduled programming with probably 2 episodes a week. So let's get ready for SEC play. And like I said, those episodes will be coming out twice a week. And if there is anything you want me to discuss in those episodes, throw them down in the comments. I do read all of those. So I do appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.